Hello, my name is Patrick McKenna. I'm joined here today with Andy Mary, and we're here to talk a little bit about the referendum, which is upcoming on April 5th.
And we want to share with you some of the questions that people have been asking about the referendum. And Patrick, would you just say what the referendum is and why we're running it?
In a nutshell, the referendum asks for $25 million to renovate two rural schools, Crestwood and Mattoon, consolidate 5 other schools, and build a new school on the western edge of town.
Okay, and I would add to that we have struggled along with referendums here for 10 years or more on the elementary level, and we know that we have to do something with our elementary facilities. And this was a compromise plan by the board that hopefully both rural and city voters will be able to support.
You bring up a good point. This is a plan that keeps a rural presence. With other referendums, we did close all of the rural schools, and this keeps some open in the areas where we have the most population. So if you look at the southeast corner of our school district, that is where the bulk of our rural population lives, and that is where we are keeping the 2 schools open.
Now, Patrick, people have talked about other ideas, and certainly we had over 30 ideas that we looked at as a board. And one of the ideas that I asked Jim Schultz to make a motion on the night we were going over this stuff was to have a K-6 system, and since 8th grade at least, to the high school. Can you say anything about what that K-6? Jim is saying K-6 in all of the elementary schools right now. I guess if I was there, I would have had a little different version of it, but address that K-6 in all the elementaries.
Jim's a well-meaning person, but you know as well as I, we've sat through numerous presentations that suggest that the operations budget really requires us to close down schools. Each individual school has a cost, and we are not able to manage that, keeping separate independent little schools open. Another aspect of that is the changing demographics in our district. There aren't enough students to just purely fill Spring Valley with students from Spring Valley anymore. You will have to take students from a bunch of different places. And if you want to keep the schools balanced on a year-to-year basis, you will have to change the district lines every year. It adds up to being chaotic and not good for education.
That's correct. And those buildings also need some work. And we've had architects in, and they've told us what it would cost to renovate each building, bring that HVAC up to standards. In Jim's plan, we'd have to build rooms onto each and every school, and that would cost at least about $4 million per school. 4 times 7 would be somewhere in that $30 million range. And it also, by sending 6th grade back to the rural schools and the city schools, we would actually be adding more teachers. Right now, in 3 of our rural schools, we have class sizes, 50% of the classes are 15 kids or less. And so if we sent 6th grade back, it would just extend that.
You bring up a really good point about why, part of the reason why this referendum is being presented. We are dealing with demographic changes in our district where we have lost about 250 students in the past 10 years, just by the nature of just changing demographics over time. And so that means we can't afford to keep all of these schools open, unfortunately. Another thing that you bring up is about renovations and adding. If you look at each of these individual schools, what you will see are retrofit after retrofit after retrofit, almost beginning with just after they were built. Libraries were not required when these schools were built. Computer labs didn't exist when these schools were built. Special education requirements did not exist when these schools were built. Art and music education requirements were not there when these schools were built. And each time these have to be added on, and our schools really just can't take it anymore.
That's right. A few years ago, we had a study done by CISA 10. And CISA 10 said that for $10 million, we could bring those schools up to a usable standard of 1960. They also said that it would be considerably more money to bring them up to a standard that would meet a school of today.
That's right. Just for the very reason that I just mentioned, all of those things that have been added in didn't exist when those schools were built.
That's a good point. Now, some people have asked why move 5th and 8th grade? Why move the 8th grade to the high school? And also, what about the problems there? They don't feel 8th graders will mix with 12th graders. How are we going to keep them separate?
That is a great question. When you look at our facilities and using our facilities wisely, which the school district and our constituency has asked us, we have a new facility, which is the high school, that does have some space for classrooms. And we can move those 8th grade students to that facility, utilize that space well, bring the 5th grade to the middle school, and then we can build a smaller elementary school, which will save us money as a district and will allow us to provide some educational advantages for 8th graders. I think you're familiar with some of those advantages. Maybe you can talk about them a little bit.
Well, certainly Dr. Childs has mentioned several times the idea of having an 8th and 9th grade transitional academy. And so for both of those grades, it would be beneficial for them to be there. 8th graders would not officially be in high school, but they would be getting used to it. They would transition better. They would have the opportunity for some 8th graders to take higher level classes if they're higher level students. There's better tech ed facilities at the high school, and certainly 7th or 8th graders would be able to use those facilities and benefit from them. When we talk about moving the 5th grade to the middle school, I know some people think, well, no, my 5th grader's too young to have 5 or 6 teachers, but that's not what would happen. 5th graders would come to the middle school and they would have their teacher. And certainly things like band, art, music, they would have a special teacher for those, but for their daily classroom studies, they would be in one room, one teacher.
You bring up a good point. 5th grade band is a popular institution here at the Antigo Unified School District, and that is something that would be consolidated into a unified 5th grade, which would just be great for those kids. I think you bring another good point up too, is if you move the 8th grade to the high school, you're left with the 7th grade through 5th grade. It's really a younger group of students overall. You're not as concerned because they're not the 8th graders there. They've been placed in a transition role at the high school.
Exactly. Now, some people have asked, what if the referendum fails? What are you going to do?
That is a difficult question. This board has, in the past, with other boards, they have faced difficult decisions, and part of the challenge of all of those decisions is the chaos that comes with having to make difficult decisions, closing schools, moving kids. I feel strongly, however, based on our financial situation, based on the needs of the school district, that we need to move forward with some manner of plan. And I think, I feel strongly that 1, 2, at least a couple schools may need to be closed, and I think we need to act promptly in terms of that. I think in terms of closing schools, the most effective use is to close them, but also move the 5th grade to the middle school and the 8th grade to the high school, because we can do that, and that will help us have smaller classes, smaller total population of students at the schools that remain open.
Some people have been concerned that we're going to close these schools and we won't be able to do anything with them once they're closed, that there won't be a use for them.
That's right.
Would you like to address that?
The school district has a proud tradition of working with community organizations and groups, from the aquatic center to a number of different activities. So we look to the community. If there are needs for these buildings, we certainly would be open to those and working with the community. For example, there's the senior center that is in process right now. We, as a school district, speaking as a board member, would be open to helping with that process in some way, and certainly having the space to do that if we do close some of these buildings.
And how about organizations that are a little more agriculturally related, like the Antigo Tractor Club?
You bring up a good point, Andy. See, there are myriad numbers of groups. There are all sorts of groups that come up that are looking for space, and the school district is always looking to partnerships in the community.
Yes, and I think there's other opportunities for these buildings, possibly the visual arts.
That's right.
We might have, and Salvation Army. I've heard some talk that the Salvation Army might be interested in a building. So it's not like these buildings would not be used.
We have an active and engaged community, and they're always looking for spaces that, to have not just a senior center, but perhaps someday even a community center. There are always opportunities, I agree.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for viewing us today, and we hope you support the referendum as we will.
Yes, please support the referendum. Please go and vote on February 5th. Please vote yes. If you have questions, you may contact myself. What did I say? February 5th. It's way past. Let's say April 5th. So please come out and vote. Thank you very much.